Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I am your host, Trudy Rankin. And today I have John Horn with me. John is the CEO of StubGroup, and StubGroup is all about profitable digital marketing. And we're going to be talking about using paid ads and actually getting a return on your money, something that I know that a lot of my listeners just really struggle with. So welcome to the podcast, John.
Trudy, thank you so much for having me.
So can you just share with us just a little bit about your background and who you are?
Absolutely. So I always like to start by saying I'm a husband and father of three. It's the most important part of my life. But what I spend a lot of my time doing, like you said, is helping businesses with paid advertising. So Stub Group, we started over a decade ago, and I had the privilege of kind of being first employee that the founders brought on back in the day. Took over the CEO role about 6 years ago at this point. And yeah, what we do is we help all different types of businesses, whether it be retailers selling products online, local service businesses, you name it. We help them use paid advertising and other marketing methods and opportunities to generate more business and hopefully do so in as profitable a way as possible.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we'll be talking about a little bit because I know so many stories of people who have tried ads, tried to do it themselves, and really didn't know what they were doing, and then get really frustrated when they spend a lot of money and there's not a return. And it can be super just depressing when that happens. Tell us a little bit more about the parts of being a CEO of a business like this that really light you up.
The most exciting thing for me is when we drive really good results for our clients. So when I see clients being happy with our team, when I see like a great example earlier today, a couple clients left us really positive reviews, and one of our team members, posted them in our general Slack channel, and that's my favorite part of the job is seeing someone say, "Hey, I was working with this person here. They did a great job, super professional, driving great results." That keeps me going. Put it that way.
Yeah, it always makes a great difference when you can see the difference that you're making for your clients. I'm curious though, because having dabbled in the art or not so much art of trying to get something out of paid ads, can you talk a little bit about the changes that have been affecting just the whole world of paid ads over the last couple of years?
Yeah. So the last couple of years have been particularly eventful, primarily because of the introduction of AI, things like ChatGPT, things like AI overviews on Google. And so we're in kind of an inflection point right now in just how people find information, how people use the internet, which is it's fun, it's scary, it's all sorts of things. But I would say some of the big trends that I'm seeing, are of course people are starting to rely more and more on things like ChatGPT and other LLMs. And again, the AI overviews I mentioned that you see when you search on Google to find information. That can be a problem for advertisers because most advertisers are, using Google Ads, Meta Ads, things like that to get in front of people. And the more people right now who use something like ChatGPT, the less options that we have to get the right people to our websites, to our businesses by advertising. That said, I also think that it's almost a foregone conclusion that advertising is going to come to these platforms like ChatGPT, for example. There's just too much money being left on the table by these businesses who are also deeply unprofitable in the case of OpenAI right now to not do it. And so I think that over these next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for savvy advertisers and marketers who are willing to kind of get that first mover advantage, really figure out quickly when, let's say, when ads come to ChatGPT, when more ads come to AI overviews on Google, things like that, to figure out how to leverage those on behalf of their brands and their businesses. And I think you'll see a little bit of a shift in terms of which advertisers, which marketers are winning right now. And a lot of winnings are going to go to the people who figure out first how to use these new platforms.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Keep reading articles about how that whole ads on space is gonna be happening within the AI tools, and it won't just be ChatGPT. It's interesting to me how it's following a pattern, almost like with the search and things like that. But before we get into that particular topic, because I'd like to get into that a little bit deeper, any other changes over the last couple of years that you've seen significantly impact on just that whole attempt to get ads to work for your business?
Couple of things that come to mind. I would say tracking the success of your advertising has gotten harder over time for a couple of different reasons. Some of it has to do with things like Apple making changes to tracking on their devices, the big iOS 14 update that happened a few years ago that really impacted Meta and their tracking for years. They've kind of recovered from it at this point. But the harder it is to track the success of your campaigns, the harder it is to make your campaign successful because you have to know what's working, what's not working, so that you can keep iterating on that and scaling that. So tracking has definitely become more complex, and customers' journeys are very fragmented. They go to many different places to find information to come across your brand. And it can be hard to know how much you should be investing into those different places to again achieve profitability from your ads. So that's been a big thing. I would also say the big platforms, Google Ads, Meta Ads, for example, they continue to get more mature. And what I mean by that is there is a ton of competition. Everyone is there as advertisers because that's where all the people are, where it's where all the users are. And so it just gets more expensive over time. Cost per clicks go up. It's just harder to, it's more expensive to get the traffic that you need to get. And so what that means is that advertisers have to be even smarter, even more data driven, even more creative in terms of how they run their campaigns because you could afford to make some mistakes if you're paying 10 cents a click. If you're paying $10 a click, you can't afford to make those same mistakes because each one is so expensive and therefore so valuable. And so that's another, I'd say, trend that you just kind of see year over year as costs going up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, just thinking about Google search ads and the whole search world and how much it's changed in terms of being able to utilize the habits that people usually have about jumping onto Google or other search engines and searching for what they need. And AI has changed that, and it's continuing to change, obviously, quite rapidly. Can you maybe share some thoughts with us about how you're helping your clients adjust to that shift and not just be, oh, woe is me, but to take advantage of it?
The way you frame that, I think, is really important. It shouldn't be, woe is me. It should be, what are the opportunities here? Because at the end of the day, the need is still there. People need the product, the service, whatever it is that you're selling. And it's simply a question of where are they going to find that information and how do you make sure that you're the solution that's being presented. So I'd say I kind of break it into two buckets. First of all, we can't ignore what we're currently doing I should say, we can't go into new things at the expense of what we're currently doing. So even though ChatGPT is certainly the shiny new thing and absolutely there's a hockey stick curve of growth there, still Google has the majority of the market share when it comes to search. So we are still investing tons of time, tons of energy into Google search ads, etc., because that is still where most people are going to find information. But then we also have to make sure that we're allocating a percentage of our time, of our thought process, of our investment into doing things like figuring out, okay, how is ChatGPT sourcing its information? And, when I go to it and I say, hey, what's the best moving company near me? Or what's the best agency for this or whatever? How are they choosing who they show? Because they have to filter in some way. They're not just giving you a list of, the 100 moving companies near me. They're saying, hey, here's the top one, the top one, two, three. That's a very real example, talking to a client this morning about that very thing. And so there's a lot of reverse engineering right now and figuring out, okay, where are they getting this information? How do we make sure that they get that information from us so that they prevent our clients as solutions? And when we can figure this out, again, a lot of opportunity there to be a first mover in this space and get a lot of business out of that.
Yeah, because I've been doing a lot of looking at the whole concept. You've got SEO, and now you've got GEO, generative engine optimization, and it is a veritable moving flood of stuff coming through, and trying to keep up and understand it is really, really, really interesting. Because one of the things that I'm interested in your opinion on is that for a while there, when all this was new, really new, and starting to become more mainstream, a lot of people were saying SEO is dead. Woe is me, SEO is dead. And the more we get into GEO, or this generative engine optimization, the more it seems like the people who were doing SEO really well way back when are actually going to be doing a lot better than people who went, oh, I'm not going to do SEO at all. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah. So it's, well, in many ways, it feels like the early days of SEO right now because things are changing so quickly. And yet it's even wilder, I would say, than the early days of SEO because there's so much personalization involved in these LLMs. So with ChatGPT, it's learning about you and it's going to give you answers that are different than the next person. Or in my case, I'll do 5 different searches and literally get 5 different answers, just, one after the other. And that's frustrating too for a lot of businesses. So like, how do I rank? And you have to say, ranking isn't really a thing. It's more about the percentage of times that you may be are presented as a solution, and how do we increase that percentage and get more of that pie. And I think a lot of people are realizing 2 things. One, that a lot of what's kind of been important in SEO over time is also very important in geo and how ChatGPT, as an example, looks at things. So obvious things like lots of credibility. So lots of people linking back to you, lots of people talking about you, lots of good reviews, lots of high quality content. Those types of things, which are very important for SEO, are also very important for geo. And so it's not always this completely different process between SEO and geo. But then at the same time, there do, like, I see these unique pockets of things that seem to really, really matter to ChatGPT. So like, for example, at the moment, they absolutely love like lists, like top 5 of this, top 10 of that. And when you do a search in ChatGPT, that's often one of the primary sources that you see. And so that might really have very little bearing on your organic rankings on Google. And yet, if you can get into those lists that they're pulling from, suddenly your business has a ton of visibility. And that's going to change over time. Like, 6 months from now, the weighting on that particular type of thing is probably not going to be what it is right now. And it's going to be something else. But the best people right now in the geo space, I would say, are both trying to get the foundation right of, again, great content, great credibility, things like that. And then also digging in and finding these little pockets of weight that we can really take advantage of, not in a bad way, but in a way to make sure that our businesses, our clients are the ones that are being sourced by the LLMs.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I was reading an article, I think just yesterday, that was saying that one of the differentiators now is how much PR you've gotten,
Yeah.
how many times you are listed. And you briefly mentioned that as well. And mentioned also that the probability of whether you're going to pop up in a AI search is those probabilities are probably set at the moment. They're going to change over time as they refine their own internal models. What do you think people could be doing specifically right now, based on what we know, to actually get some of that attention based off of, you could call it PR if you want, but it's how
Okay.
often do you show up in public, basically in ways that
Mhm.
the ChatGPT or other AI tool that they can
Yeah.
actually find and spot you, because they're going out there and searching the internet.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, this is something that we're, helping a lot of our clients with trying to figure out, answer that exact question. So some of it is, traditionally what you might call PR. It is going out and saying, hey, where can we get credible sources to recognize us, whether it be putting a quote from us into an article, whether it be an op-ed, whether it be, a link of some type. So traditional kind of PR, traditional backlink searching is definitely a part of things. There's also creative things like making your own, top 5 lists where we've seen actually saying, hey, here's information about us. Here's legitimate information about our competitors, but put them out on your website. They like that. And then suddenly you're ranking. So strategies like that are working well right now. They might not work well next month. They might work well for 6 months. Who knows? But, at the moment they're working. And then things, again, a lot of it comes down to not trying to game the system, but legitimately have good original content about a particular issue. So one thing that I see the engines liking a lot is they like statistics, they like original content, they like content that's not just an AI generated article in and of itself. It's not just a rehashing of the 1,000 other articles they've already read on the internet. So great example, just very tangible example. My agency, we do a lot of work in a particular niche, helping advertisers who've been suspended by Google fix those suspensions. And so one thing that we did is we have a lot of proprietary data from people reaching out to us, and we did a study essentially. Hey, here's numbers, percentages related to this issue, related to how many people get suspended and types of suspensions and things like that. And that was content that just didn't exist on the web because we're one of the few people who have access to this type of information. And that ranked very quickly in the LLMs because it was new, helpful, accurate information that didn't exist yet. And that's going to be ultimately the best approach for businesses to try and make sure they're showing up in the LLMs.
So it's interesting that you said original content. And obviously, if you give AI the right parameters, it can kludge things together to create original, in quotes, content. How human does the content need to be with this new GEO or GEO, a way of AI tools helping you find things?
It's hard. It's a good question to ask. It's a hard question to answer because there's no defined, hey, X percentage of humanity per se, right now. But what I would say, there's a couple of things that help to set you apart as being, again, original content. So the first thing is statistics. So if you can, whether that's be polling your customers, polling people you work with, polling first party data that you have access to, whatever it be, actually coming up with obviously accurate but new information that just doesn't exist on the web yet. That's gold to the LLMs because they know what they already have, and they see, oh, no one has said that 39% of Google Ads suspensions are due to circumventing systems. Great, that's super relevant. I'm going to provide that as an answer and view you as a credible source when people ask questions about suspensions. So statistics, I think, are really important, really helpful. Something that we're paying more attention to right now is actually the imagery that is used in posts on websites and whatnot. So there's debates around this, but likely if you're using a lot of AI generated imagery, stock imagery, that's probably not viewed as positively by the LLMs as if you're actually taking your own photos or really, just creating new original photography or images. So that's more of a tactical thing, but something that we're doing some research into right now. And then again, I would say just new pieces of information that don't exist yet. So if you know how to do something, maybe it's very nuanced, very niche, but if there aren't already a bunch of step 1, 2, 3, how to do this online, go create your own. And then when the LMs are researching that type of information, they're not going to see a bunch of other places that have similar information or similar structure as to what you've written. And that means they're going to be more likely to grab what you've written and source you and point to you as a credible source.
That's kind of interesting. So you basically come up with, I'm making this up, but it's as a potential example, you would do some sort of report and then you can either repost the report or get people to use it as a lead magnet, but you're going to write about that report. I talk about it on podcasts, put it up as a blog post, and then you could either run ads to it or somehow you're going to get people to actually find out about it, which means you got to have good SEO, not GEO, but good SEO. And then, as you're saying, then the tools, the AI tools are going to then come and using the really solid, the SEO foundations, then they're going to use that to find what you've got. That's interesting. So really, really building on expertise that people have. It's a really good way for any business if you've got good, solid expertise and people, maybe it's something that maybe you're in a really crowded space, but maybe you have a unique insight or you've surveyed all of your customers and they told you this, because nobody can replicate that. And that's going to be new. That's interesting. That's very interesting. I've got a question for you. Oh, I want to touch on this first, though. You mentioned photos, and that's always been it's a big argument. Should you use AI generated images? Should you use stock photos? And most small businesses are going to go, I don't have any choice because I don't have the ability to take photos or good photos, or I don't have the creative eye needed to take photos that will catch people's eye. Can you just comment on the potential opportunities here for small business owners or even somebody who's a photographer to start a new service that do actually, and how would they do that? Making, how would they go about creating like a library or repository of photos or a service that gives people original, unique photos that obviously you give them a title and you have an alt image and all that sort of stuff. How would somebody go about doing that?
It's a tough one because, yeah, like you said, it's a lot harder for many small businesses to take good looking photos than it is to write content. And this is certainly a debate. Not everyone's convinced that AI generated images are a problem when it comes to ranking and whatnot. And I would definitely say, like from my perspective, having an AI generated image is better than nothing. So if it's a question between just no imagery, no graphics at all versus something that looks decent that's AI generated, I'm generally going to go with the AI generated approach. I would say there are some opportunities to get creative when you're thinking about how can you take photos. First of all, everyone's phones are high quality enough now where you don't have to go and invest in a fancy Canon camera or something. Your iPhone's, more than equipped to take a decent looking photo. And so you could do something creative, like, for example, if you have a whiteboard, great. Well, let's say you're writing a couple different blog posts. Write the name of the blog post on the whiteboard, get next to it, take a picture of you there pointing at it. It may look a little cheesy or whatever, but hey, it's got you, it's authentic, it's got something that's relative to or relevant to the content that's in the blog post. It could be something as simple as that. And so I would say try not to get too caught up on this because there's probably more important things in your business to be focusing on, but also just take your phone out, take some snaps and see if you can come up with something that looks halfway decent.
I think that's a really good idea because I can remember seeing in the past, I've seen somebody made a complete YouTube video, how-to video or
Mm,
thought video basically, and they didn't show their face. They just talked through a bunch of Post-it notes with
mm,
writing on them. And I thought that was fairly interesting way of doing it. So yeah, that is a simple idea that probably pretty much anybody could do. And if you're somebody who's not that comfortable with your face on the camera or being in the camera, then you can do faceless ones that are still legit, human, and unique, as you said. I think that's really interesting. What I'd like to do is I want to touch on something that we started to talk about at the beginning, and I think is really, really important in terms of future proofing a small business's approach to ads, or maybe even bigger businesses' approach to ads, and showing up on the AI tools, ChatGPT or whatever. If somebody or if a business was wanting to in the future run ads on the tools, the way that the tools are being used as search engines now, the AI tools,
mhm.
what would be a few things that they could do to prepare for that, given that it's not, the capability is not quite there, but we know it's coming, it's going to be coming soon. What could they do to be ready for that?
I love that question. We actually just put out a big long article just about this, about how to prepare for advertising for ChatGPT. So I'll pull from some of the things we talked about there in that article. First thing I would say, a lot of the things that apply to advertising in ChatGPT are going to be very similar to how you're thinking through advertising right now. It's things like identifying the different avatars of who your customer is. Now, on the ChatGPT side of things, it's going to be incredibly personalized because people literally have a conversation with ChatGPT. ChatGPT knows who they are. When I go and search for something, it knows I'm the CEO of StubGroup Digital Advertising Agency, and it'll tell me things like, "Oh, well, you since you do this, you might think about this that way," or something like that. And so most businesses have multiple avatars, multiple different segments of audiences that they're going to be going after. And so you want to be really sure that as you're thinking through your messaging and your offers and how you're positioning yourself, that you are able to tailor that to those different avatars. Because I think that level of personalization is going to be next level with ChatGPT compared to with Google, where yes, they do try to personalize ads as much as they can based upon what they know about what you've been searching, what websites you visited recently, etc. But still, you're typing a keyword into Google as opposed to literally having a conversation and telling exactly what you want to ChatGPT. So, thinking through those avatars, thinking through the messaging and how you're positioning your offers, I think is super important. I would also say making sure that the content that you're creating on your website is friendly to geo, really what we've already been talking about, I think is probably going to be helpful. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that if ChatGPT is already sourcing your information organically when people are asking questions, that's probably going to give you a leg up when they're choosing whose ads to serve, because they're going to say, well, we already know that these guys are experts. And so if we serve their ads, they're more likely to be clicked on and they're more likely to give a good experience to the user because we believe that they have expertise. I don't know if it's going to work that way, but I think it should. And that's my guess how it will work. So doing good geo, I think, will be helpful preparation for advertising as well. And outside of that, I would also just encourage people to not get too caught up in the shining new thing. I mean, at the end of the day, good advertising works when you have a good business that works. You have to have good fundamentals. You have to have good salespeople, good products, good reviews, all those types of things. And then advertising wherever you do it, whether it's Google, ChatGPT, etc., is fuel on the fire to get people into that funnel that you then convert into sales. So future proof, think about it, but also don't forget to focus on your business and the fundamentals at the same time.
That is definitely good advice. I'm curious because obviously when we organized to talk today, part of the information that you sent through talks about how many people you've helped in the amount of revenue you helped them generate through ads and stuff. Have you got an example of somebody who has had to face a particularly challenging struggle in
Mm.
actually getting ads to work for them? Can you share that with us and what you did to help them get over the challenges that they faced and actually successfully use ads to generate revenue for the business?
Yeah, lots of different examples I could pull from. I'll go with one. They're a business to business company. And a lot of business to business companies struggle with advertising because often it's hard to differentiate between a normal person, a consumer, residential consumer searching for something, and a business searching for that same thing on Google. And they had this issue where, like, they're in the fuel industry, supplying fuel to people. And a lot of people will go and search for getting fuel delivered to my home. Like, if I've got gas tanks outside that powered my oven. And so I might search for gas delivery. And that same keyword might also be searched by a construction company who's looking for fuel delivered in bulk for all of their equipment. And so what we did with that client that has really helped improve the quality of their leads over time is to, on the tracking side of things, identify where those relevant leads are coming from, where the business leads are coming from, and feed that data back to Google. So, for example, they take phone calls. We listen to all the phone calls we get, and we mark which calls are what we want, and we import those as what we call conversions into Google Ads. And we don't import the calls from just the normal residential people who we can't help. And so over time, Google has learned, oh, this is good. And Google is very good at looking at all sorts of signals on the back end, far beyond just what you type into Google, to say, oh, well, these are 10 people that we said are good. And here's some patterns of behavior that we see across them. Great. Next time the 11th person searches, it matches those patterns. Let's show the ad and let's bid aggressively to get a click on it. Whereas this one over here, this isn't converting. So even though it's the same keyword search, let's not as aggressively bid on that. And so over time, we've been able to, again, really improve the quality of the leads. It's not perfect. It's never perfect, but we've gotten dramatically better, wasting less time for their salespeople and just wasting less money on leads that are people that they can actually help and service.
And that's a really good example because there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. One is using analytics to help improve the quality of the people that you get back. And also that the idea that a lead is not always a good lead. A lead can be a time waster, a tire kicker, somebody who really wastes your salespeople's time, and they can be really frustrating. So being able to use analytics and data to improve that, I think, is really important. And the other thing that sort of crossed my mind was that, like I said earlier, I'm a dabbler with ads, so I know just enough to be dangerous. And I know that what you're talking about right there in that example, that whole how to use the information from calls to then inform Google, that is next level stuff. that it would take somebody who doesn't know what they're doing a very, very, very long time to figure out how to do it. And sometimes, lots of times, it is just better off to pay somebody else to do that and then figure out how to, do the ROI, make sure, of course, that you get to the place where you're getting more money from paying for ads, getting it back from
Mhm.
having ads, then you're paying for the ads. So the ROI is there. So I think that's a really good use case. It's just a fascinating, I think, topic. There's so much there that we've sort of covered, and we could talk about this for a very long time. But what I'd like to do is, if you could provide the link for that paper that you talked about, the blog post that you've just put out, the article, we'll put
Yeah.
that in the show notes. And if anybody is interested in getting in touch with you or talking with you, where's the best place to get in touch?
Best place to get in touch is through our website, stubgroup.com. Got lots of information on there, hopefully some helpful stuff, and then means to contact us. And I also would say check out our YouTube channel. We put a lot of videos out there, obviously for free, about all sorts of topics, just helping businesses with their advertising and marketing. And we love to get people subscribed on there as well.
Fantastic. That's great. So I'll make sure I put those in the show notes. But John, it's been really interesting talking with you today. I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.